Right now people want to know what TVs to get with the next gen consoles. Xbox Series X, PlayStation 5. And while I'm not going to completely discount quality just for gaming features, I do want to tell you the top TVs that are next gen ready. So what's up, it's B the Installer. I'm a dude playing a dude disguised as another dude that knows something about TV, I guess. And I want to share that knowledge. To get that knowledge, you gotta subscribe to join this journey and make sure to ring the bell so you know when the next video is uploaded. And at any point, go ahead and smash the like button if you like the video. So right now I'm in the middle of finding a great mid-tier TV for the bedroom or living room or whatever it might be for. And I got to get my hands on a couple more TVs in order to make that great decision. One of the TVs that I'm looking to review right now is the Vizio H1 OLED, which is right over there. I actually drove 3 hours round trip to get that so I could put up a good review and also compare it to the LG C10 OLED too. So check out both those videos when they're up. They'll be linked here when they are. But in the meanwhile, I have a lot of people asking me about what TV is great for gaming, and that is a great question. So I thought I'd make a video, kind of introduce you to a few TVs, and let you know which ones are my picks for gaming. So to do that, I'm going to quickly go over some of the traditional features and then go over some of the gaming features for these TVs. Then I'll offer some differentiators for some of the top OLEDs and LED TVs. And finally, I'll give you a TV in each of the different price ranges as the top gaming TVs. So stick around to the end because I think you're really going to leave this video with a great understanding of what TV to buy. So from a traditional standpoint, there's a bunch of different features you can look at, but two of the most common features are really just how bright a TV can get and how dark a TV can get. So first with the brightness. When you think of brightness, you typically think of QLEDs as achieving that higher SDR and HDR peak brightness. But the downside to the QLED TVs is that it doesn't have the perfect blacks like an OLED does. But a lot of the top QLEDs actually have features that help increase the contrast ratios and keep the dark parts dark with local dimming and things like that. So some of the top TVs that we're going to talk about is the Q90t and the Q80t from Samsung, along with the Sony X900h, the X950h, we have the TCL 635, and we also have the Hisense H9G. And on the other hand, we have OLED TVs. And if you're a fan of OLED TVs, you're a fan of the perfect blacks, the infinite contrast. And you know that they don't have quite the HDR peak brightness of the QLEDs for the most part. And because of the perfect blacks and the very deep and rich color, there's a case to be made that OLED TVs have the best picture quality. But that can be a very touchy subject and we'll keep talking about that. Some of the OLED TVs on the market, the LG C10 and the C9, the LG B10 and the B9, which are just below that, the Vizio H1 OLED TV, which is right behind me, and of course we have the Sony A8h and the A9G. And so there are definitely two different camps here, and there's a lot of people in the middle asking questions on which way they should go, OLED TV or QLED TV. I'm gonna give you a bunch of these features, and then we're gonna try to figure out with the gaming features which one's right for you. So one of the most sought after features of gaming is, of course, 4K at 120 frames per second. And it seems important for gaming, but maybe it's not quite as important as people make it out to be. As Microsoft has stated, 4K at 60 frames per second is going to be the standard, even though the Xbox Series X can achieve 120 frames per second. And with even less titles coming out in the 4K at 120 for PlayStation, I'm assuming it's going to be similar. Both systems will of course be able to do 4K at 120 frames per second, but we kind of gloss over the fact that these are $500 systems and it may be hard for them to do what high-end computers and GPUs just barely do now. But let's say 4K at 120 is important, and we'll just start at that as a baseline. Something that might be even more important than the 4K at 120 is of course VRR, or variable refresh rate. So with VRR, the TV will be able to match the ever-changing refresh rate of your game system. So when VRR is present, it'll keep your TV on the same page, well, really on the same frame. And this is so that your TV doesn't have any tearing or stuttering in the screen while you're playing. NVIDIA's G-Sync and AMD's FreeSync are two different VRR types supported on many TVs, along with the more generic HDMI VRR. Another feature is the ALLM, or Auto Low Latency Mode, which is basically game mode. So the TV goes into its low lag settings and basically is the most responsive in gaming. And lastly is the eARC, or Enhanced Audio Return Channel, channel, and while that's not specifically just a gaming feature, it's an HDMI 2.1 feature. So if you want to have gaming in Dolby Atmos or DTS:X through a soundbar or a great sound system, this is what you're gonna have to have, is the eARC. So do you got that all? I'm sure most of you already know most of this stuff. So to put this into application, let's talk about some of the QLEDs we were speaking about and what they do and don't have. So one of the most popular LED TVs right now for gaming is the Sony X900h. So the Sony X900h has pretty good SDR peak brightness, and it has above average HDR peak brightness. It does have great contrast and local dimming, so overall the Sony X900h has a pretty good picture. But the reason this TV has become quite popular is because it has all the features we just talked about. Well, it's gonna have them. This TV is HDMI 2.1 ready, so in order to get these 2.1 features, we're actually waiting on a firmware update. But it will have the 4K at 120, the VRR, the ALLM. But many have stated that it does have the eARC working, even though that's also supposed to be in this next firmware update. But what about other QLED TVs? Samsung has two great 4K TVs for gaming. It's the Samsung Q80t and the Samsung Q90t. And both of those have game mode again. They do have VRR in the form of FreeSync, and they also have 4K at 120. Now the downside is that's all rolled into just one HDMI port. And the eARC is a separate port itself. So I think that's okay for most people that are just gonna get the one console, but if you're gonna get two consoles, that may be a problem for you and you might wanna think about that. The Samsung Q80t is actually a little bit brighter than the X900h from Sony. The Sony has them beat on the contrast, the local dimming, and they actually have a cleaner screen when it comes to the uniformity. So there's a little bit more dirty screen effect with the Samsung Q80t. And it is pretty close to the Sony, but right now the Sony X900h is actually on sale. So that makes it a little bit more difficult because the Q80t is quite expensive still. On the other hand, the Samsung Q90t kind of has it beat in pretty much every aspect. The Q90t is much brighter. It also has better contrast and it has really good local dimming. And while I think the Samsung Q90t is actually better than the Sony X900h, it is twice the price, and there's one more issue with Samsung. They actually don't support Dolby Vision. It's not a huge deal because the Samsungs are pretty bright and vibrant, but it seems like Dolby Vision is kind of the clear winner when it comes to HDR standards. Another TV that I want to mention, because it's pretty feature packed for a budget TV, is the TCL 635 Mini LED. The TCL 6 series have been known to be pretty good TVs, and it comes with a Roku operating system, so if you're gonna just stream and game, it could be a TV for you, kind of in the budget price point. And it has pretty similar specs to the X900h and the Q80t, but it's a little bit less expensive. This TCL 635 has VRR and it has ALLM, but it's not HDMI 2.1, so it doesn't do 4K at 120. Now, it does do 4K at 60 and it does 1440 at 120, but it just depends on if you absolutely must have the 4K at 120. The HDMI 2.0 on this TCL does not allow that. And lastly, in the LEDs, I just want to mention the Hisense H9G is a really good TV. And I did a review on that, so check it out. But it doesn't come with pretty much any of the gaming features. It does do 4K at 60 frames per second, but that's about it. But it's one of the nicest LEDs that I've seen, and for the price that you can get it at, it's better than the TCL in picture quality and it's better than the X900h. It just doesn't have all the gaming features, so you know, that's just something I wanted to throw out there in case you're kind of a movie and TV watcher with gaming on the side. I would recommend the Hisense H9G as a budget option as well. So now let's get to the OLED TVs. So LG's been known to be pretty good for gaming, and they have a couple great TVs. They have the LG B9, the LG C9 from last year, and this year they have the LG B10 and the C10, and even the G10. I'm gonna get into the traditional specs of these TVs as a whole, but first I wanna talk about the gaming features for the OLED TVs. So the two TVs from 2019, the B9 and the C9, have two HDMI 2.1 ports. They have VRR and G-Sync, and they have game mode, while the B10, the C10, the G10 all have 4 HDMI 2.1 ports. And the 2020 models have pretty much everything. They have G-Sync, FreeSync, game mode, 4K at 120, and eARC. So one of the top TVs for gaming, obviously. Now, one technical knock is that they went from having two ports that supported, you know, HDMI 2.1 at 48 gigabits per second in 2019 to now having 4 HDMI 2.1s that only go 40 gigabytes per second. So the difference between that is just being able to do 444 color in 12-bit versus 444 in 10-bit. LG released a statement saying that they prefer to allocate the resources of the hardware to the CPU, GPU, and to have 4 ports versus just 2. So I'm not going to get too far into the weeds on this, but I think the 40 gigabits per second is quite fast and good to go for these next-gen consoles. The Vizio OLED, the H1, is also pretty interesting to me because, you know, it's about 75% of the LG, and it has a lot of the gaming features as well. So it has 2 HDMI 2.1s, kind of like the X900H from Sony, and it does support VRR and game mode, and it has eARC. So I have a little more work to do on the Vizio, as I've told you, but I've heard a lot of great things. Not bad for the first shot at an OLED. And as far as the Sony OLEDs go in 2020, the A9G and the A8H, neither one of them actually have HDMI 2.1, so I'm not going to consider them as a top gaming TV, even though both of them are fantastic to look at. So there are 2 main gripes with OLED TVs. One is burn-in, of course, and the other one is, even if you're not concerned with burn-in, is that they don't get that bright. So is burn-in a real concern? Of course it's something you should think about. I mean, I've heard from everything from, nah, it's never gonna happen in a million years, to my TV has burn-in after 2 hours of use. So obviously it's somewhere along the spectrum, but for the most part, with mixed usage for your TV, you're likely not to get burn-in on your OLED TV. For example, I have an LG C10 that I use primarily for watching movies, watching TV and sports, and then some gaming. The TV's never on the same thing for more than a few hours, and even after that, I have a couple different screensavers. The Apple TV has a screensaver, as well as the actual LG has a blackout screen with a little bit of fireworks going off. So even when I've left it on all night, I come out in the morning and it's blacked out screen. It does anger me a little bit that I left it on, or the kids left it on, but at least it was blacked out the whole night. But gaming is different. I mean, if you're gonna be gaming 24/7, it is something to think about. If you have a static screen, same kind of logos and menus in the same spots all the time, that could definitely be a problem. There are some options that you can use to reduce this, like pixel shifting and reducing the logo luminance, and that could help, but just understand that potential. The other difference that I spoke about when compared to the QLEDs like the Sonys and the Samsungs is that sometimes the peak brightness is not as high as the QLEDs. Right off the bat, the peak brightness of the Samsung Q90t is twice that of the LG C10. The Samsung Q80t is between those, so it's not quite as bright as the Q90t, but it's still brighter than the LG C10. And then the Sony X900h is about the same brightness as the LG OLED. So that's kind of interesting, because we're talking about a Sony QLED that's only as bright as a LG OLED. And just for reference, the B9 and the B10 are not quite as bright as the C9 and the C10 from LG. That's just kind of the trade-off. When you step down, you're losing a little bit of the brightness. And I guess that's why the C10 is a little more expensive. So where does that leave you? What should you guys buy? Well, if you're fortunate enough where money is not a concern, I recommend getting an LG C10 OLED for your gaming TV. And if you're concerned about the burn-in, I think you'd be very happy with a Samsung Q90t as well. Or maybe a Q800t or a Q900TS if money is no object. But you know, we're talking 4K, so let's get those 8K TVs out of here. So to summarize the LG C10, it has 4 HDMI 2.1s that do 4K at 120. It has VRR, FreeSync, and G-Sync. It has game mode, and it has eARC. So very feature rich, very good TV. One of my favorite TVs. In fact, check out best 4K TV of 2020. The only things to concern yourself with, are you concerned about the burn-in or are you concerned about the brightness? So I didn't mention it before, but kind of, are you in a bright room or a dark room? Because obviously if it's a very dark room, you know, OLEDs are king. If you're gonna be in an extremely bright room with maybe light directly on the TV, the QLED might be the better choice. And the Samsung Q90t is the top dog when it comes to brightness. It does have the one HDMI 2.1 that has FreeSync VRR. It does do game mode, and it does do 4K at 120. It also has eARC, but it doesn't have Dolby Vision. So if that's a concern for you, or realistically if you're saying enough with the $2,000 TVs, dude, then the Sony X900H might be the gaming TV for you, as it's very popular right now. Because that also is promised to have, you know, HDMI 2.1 on 2 ports with VRR, with game mode, and with eARC. Right now on BestBuy.com, you can get a 65-inch X900H for only $969, and the prices will probably even get better. So check out the links below because I'm going to put links for all of these TVs down there, but I think the X900H is going to be a very popular TV. And right there, as far as quality, but a little bit more expensive, is the Samsung Q90t. So if you're a Samsung person and that's the way you want to go with it, I think the Samsung Q90t is a great TV as well. Almost identical quality. Right now the Sony's a little less expensive. We'll see how that changes. And if you're looking for a little bit more of an entry level but still great quality TV, that TCL 635 is a great option as well. The traditional features are right there with the Samsung Q90t and the Sony X900H. It doesn't have HDMI 2.1, it is 2.0. So you get 4K at 60 frames, or again, you get 1440 at 120, but it does have VRR, it does have game mode, and it does have eARC. So that's how gaming TVs shake out in 2020. Definitely check the links out below, like I said, if you're looking at getting one of these TVs. And let me know in the comments, what's your favorite gaming TV? Which one are you gonna get? Do you have any other questions? Definitely let me know down in the comments. Definitely pound the like button on the way out. It's a huge help, and subscribe and ring the bell to be notified when the next video uploads. And just remember, with my help, you can be the installer.